ladies and gentlemen. My name's Craig Otto. It's an honor to delineate operational excellence for you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the principles of operational excellence in a process I call the principle grinder. In the 18 years of my professional career, I've implemented or I have been responsible for implementing operational excellence in every single position that I've held. I've trained over 1,500 people, held over 300 events, and mentored over 800 events. And despite all my experience, I would say that the more you implement, the more opportunity you realize you have for improvement, and the more you realize that you don't know. So I'm hopeful that my presentation will complement what you've possibly learned already about operational excellence, but I'm confident that it will also show you things that maybe you didn't know about operational excellence. So with that, let's get started. By defining operational excellence, I think the most common answer when you ask what that is that it's when you execute the business strategy more consistently and reliably than the competition. But there's also many other explanations for what operational excellence is. And one of the most important things is when you create value for your customer. And when you can create value for the customer with less risk, less cost, more revenue, and show results and use the tools like lean thinking, Six Sigma, things like scientific management, and also use your culture, your people, and the leadership within that culture. All of that represents what operational excellence is. And even though operational excellence is a matter of doing things with excellence, it's also about demonstrating performance. And when looking at revenue of a business, when you take away the costs, what you're left is the profit. And the profit over time will be challenged in that the customer is always expecting more for less. And so when you look at the business and you look at the costs of the business, and the cost of, you can break that into the cost of variation and the cost of waste, and then you have the cost of the value added part of it, the theoretical cost. And the challenge comes when the customer says, I want this product for less. And that's when operational excellence steps in and is able to cut through that business waste, that business variation, and help reduce the cost of the product, yet maintaining the profit margin that had always been there before, and or to grow that margin. Now, the tools of operational excellence are what most people think about when they think of operational excellence, and rightly so. I think there for a while we put too much emphasis on the tools. But then I think we went the other way where we focused too much maybe on other things, because the tools are really what actually create the results. And we have to use lean first. And the reason for that is because Six Sigma is about refining the process, reducing that weight, or reducing the variation. And the reason you do lean first is because you don't want to reduce variation on a process that shouldn't exist to begin with. And I think that's a very key learning point, is that as you implement lean, you can then complement with Six Sigma and reduce that waste, and then dial it in with the Six Sigma process and problem solving. So if it's as easy as using the tools, why is there this big struggle? What's the key to operational excellence in the journey? And of course, if you talk to anyone who's done this for a long time, they will say sustainment is the biggest key to implementing operational excellence, sustaining the gains in what you do. And I'm not just talking about sustaining the results of the improvement. I'm also talking about sustaining the efforts that you put into it, sustaining the projects that you do, sustaining the training that you put into your people. How many times do we train people to be a green belt or a black belt? They do a project or maybe 2 projects, and then they don't do any more projects. That's a sustainment issue. People that get trained in this should continue to do it for the rest of their career. Now, sustainment is such a problem, you could call it an epidemic. And I wanted to use an analogy that describes the sustainment problem well. Imagine this. You have to go get some blood work done 6 weeks before your annual checkup. A few weeks after your doctor sends you some pills. And it seems kind of odd considering you're a healthy person, but you decide not to take the pills and wait and ask your doctor at the appointment why the doctor sent you the pills. And when you walk into your appointment for your doctor, immediately the doctor asks, "Did you take your pills?" And you explain that you didn't, and the doctor's instantly upset. He tells you to take the pills because the blood work that he did found a disease, and this disease is terminal. And so instantly you realize, man, I need to take these pills. I need this cure. And I like this analogy because it helps us understand the reason why sustainment is such a problem. I want you to think about the waste and variation within our work as the disease, right? Within your business, waste and variation is the disease. And how many of us do our job every day because that's just the way it's always been done. And we live with this disease and we don't even realize it. And we have this cure, operational excellence, but it won't work if we don't use it. And in the end, we don't sustain because we either don't know we need it, we don't know we need operational excellence, or we don't believe that we need it. We think we're good enough. And so, how do we get around becoming complacent? We want these optimal results, but what do we need to do to achieve these optimal results? Well, optimal results require model behavior from your employees. And that model behavior, where does that come from? Well, principles actually direct that model behavior. And so principles is ultimately the secret sauce of operational excellence. And so here are the principles of operational excellence. Pretty straightforward, creating value, constant purpose, flow, pool, quality within the process, building quality into the process, seeking perfection, and then, of course, respect and humility. Now, I want you to notice the last two. The last two, respect and humility, are what you would call cultural principles. And the reason they're called cultural principles is because they deal with people. And they're also, more important than that, is we have to understand that they are fundamentally primary. They come first. Without these two, those other principles above don't really matter. Because no matter what you try with the other ones above, if you don't have the principles of respect and humility, the other ones will fail ultimately. So it's very important that the bottom two are given a lot of attention, and we spend our time on those. So I want to spend some time talking about how do we use these principles, right? We have these principles, but how do we use them? And I want to take you through a process called the principle grinder. I call it the principle grinder because it shows us our gap from reality to a standard of excellence. It grinds us down and makes us humble to see the opportunities for excellence. And these principles have these rough-edged teeth that grind into us and help us see the opportunities. And so let me demonstrate my point. I'm going to talk about the three different laws. I'm breaking the principles into three different categories. One is the laws of science, one is the laws of humanistic nature, and one is the laws of excellence. And I want to give you examples of how the principles can grind in each of those different categories. And so for the laws of nature, most people don't think of the laws of nature as a key contributor to operational excellence, the laws of science. And they really are important. Have you ever heard of gravity, right? You've heard of gravity. Is that really operational excellence principle? Well, sure it is. Think about next time you go to a grocery store and you grab a gallon of milk, observe what happens. When you pull out the gallon of milk, the next gallon of milk slides down behind it. And that puts the next one in front of the next customer. Now, does the store have a stock person waiting in back just to push the rest of the milk down? Of course not. In this situation, gravity is being used to make it easier and more efficient to get milk. It's one of the simplest examples of how a principle like gravity can be used to create operational excellence. Now, that's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about maybe the laws of humanistic nature. These are things like honesty, integrity, respect. These are things that, is more on the humanistic side. That's why I call them the humanistic laws of nature. Have you ever, so let's do a grind here. Have you ever told a lie? How many lies do you think you've told in your lifetime? Could be white lies, withholding information, deceiving, spinning information. Is it a big deal? Is it a big deal to do these things? Some people say no. A white lie is not going to hurt anybody. But my point is, how many lies does it take to ruin someone's trust? And it only takes one. We know it only takes one. And so therefore, any lie we would tell is very hurtful when it comes to trust. And trust is so important when you start talking about culture and having a culture of excellence. Without trust, without honesty, again, it all starts to fall apart. It doesn't matter what the other principles are because this principle is foundational, right? So these principles, they grind us. Boy, do they grind us. Even if you tell one lie, it's grinding you. It's making you realize that, man, that's not a standard of excellence, even just one lie. And so lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the laws of excellence, or our lean principles. So how many people think that quality is about inspection? Is inspection the method for getting the best quality? Many people, I like asking the question, is inspection value added? And many people argue that it is. And I like to take them through the principle grinder, which says that it's actually waste. Building quality is about building quality into the process. It means we make it impossible to make a defect. We make it impossible to make a defect. Think about that. That's what it means to build quality into a process. Let me give you an example. Have you ever been to a gas station and try to put the diesel fuel into your gas car? I hope you don't try that, but if you did by accident, you'll realize that you can't do it because the diesel nozzle is actually too big to fit in the gasoline hole of your car. And that's a perfect example of airproofing, or making it impossible to have a defect. And so this is one of those things where this principle grinds us. It always goes back to, it's not about inspection. It's about putting quality into the process by making it impossible to make defects. Inspection is just a risk management tool and nothing more. Inspection is not the key to world excellence or operational excellence. So I make a big deal out of humility because it's a big deal. It's a big deal because it's what starts it all. It's what starts the process of operational excellence. And I would go as far to say is you cannot do operational excellence without humility, period. It's the necessary ingredient for operational excellence to take hold. So let's think about how this principle ties into other principles. And I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pick seeking perfection. So humility helps us seek perfection in that it gives us that gap from excellence to where we are. And the feedback then comes from that perfect state, and it's fed back to us in the form of humility. And that process is done through the principle grinder. That's the feedback mechanism. And what I want to talk about before I leave this is ego. Ego is very important, but ego without humility kills operational excellence. It kills it. And I don't want people to think that I'm hating on ego, because none of us would be where we are today without ego. But ego by itself is dangerous. Ego with humility is what it takes. It takes both. So if I had to summarize the main points of humility and the journey of all of this, it would be that these rough-edged teeth of the principles really create the fire for our pursuit of excellence, for that fire to pursue action. And not just action, but relentless, principled action, taking us on a destination towards greatness. But we know that it's a journey that will never end. It's a journey of hard work that will test our discipline every day. I think we need to recognize that there is no greater commitment than utilizing the principles to achieve operational excellence. And it's a personal commitment, a personal commitment towards humility. And that's where it starts. And that's what I want you to give thought to today. Again, I show the slide of the tools. The greatest surgeon in the world uses the same tools as all the other surgeons. The greatest mechanic in the world uses all the same tools as the other mechanics. And any organization that tries to incorporate operational excellence uses the same tools. It's not enough to just know the tools. The ones that are great know why the tools work. They know when to use them and how to apply them. And these tools have these principles embedded deep within them. And those principles that help us know why is what creates our mindset, our engagement, and the necessary culture to create operational excellence. Therefore, using these tools must become a part of what we do in our jobs if we want to achieve excellence. Not just because they get us results, but they tell us why if we look to understand, if we have that humility. In closing, I want you to think about all the possibilities that can be achieved by doing this. Imagine not just coming to work to do your job, but coming to work with humility and being principle-based and seeking perfection in all you do. Think of your satisfied customers and relationships you could have with those customers, your shareholders, and the profit that would come from that type of excellence. That type of improvement gives new meaning to a sleeping giant. I'd like to wake that giant up, and I hope you do too. Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching my video. I hope that you liked the video and also subscribe to my channel. I encourage you to check out my ebook. It should be coming out here in July of 2019. And feel free to leave me some notes, comments down below, or email me, and I'll try to respond as soon as I can. Thanks for your time.